Howdy y'all, Caleb here. In one of the last videos where we talked about our most efficient damage dealers, or our hammers as we'd call them, you asked about what's our best anvil. What's our unit that can take the most damage and still survive? So that's what we're looking at today. Let me explain a little bit. What we're going to look at is going to be effective health, okay? So what unit has the most effective health in our army and how we can buff that up. So as a little bit of an explanation, here we're in AOS Stats Hammer, and I've inputted Saurus Warriors. You got the unit price, you got its save, its health, how many models, you got its weapon profiles. It's just a minimum unit of warriors. And a lot of times we'll use this to look at, what the damage is that we're going to do versus a 4-up save. Today we're going to be looking at how much effective health does this unit have. And what that means is essentially how much damage are you going to force me to try to save against before you kill this unit, okay? So as we look at this effective health chart, you'll see mortal wounds listed at the top here. So obviously a unit with no ward, you'll do 20 mortal wounds, you'll kill this unit of 20 health Saurus Warriors. That goes down as you get less and less rend. So if we go to 3 rend, that goes straight through on a unit of warriors, so you also only need to do 20 damage. So think of that as like you're giving me 20 1 damage saves at 3 rend. Now, generally 3 rend doesn't have 1 damage, but it's the same concept. So at that point, you're going to wipe the unit. As you go down to 2 rend, I'm going to save a few of those, 1/6, and so that means they have a little bit more effective health. Also for -1 rend, that I need to do 30. And then at 0 rend, you're doing 40. So think of it like at 0 rend, I'm saving half of the damage you're handing me for my save throws. So you need to show me 40 saves at no rend, 1 damage to wipe the unit. So that's kind of what we mean by effective health. As we stack buffs onto a unit, they get tougher and tougher. So let's say the Saurus Warriors are on an objective. So they get +1 to their save. So let's go to a 3-up save. You see their effective health now climbs. So if you have no rend and you're attacking this unit of Saurus Warriors, they now have a 3-up save. I have to fail half of that 60 damage for you to kill this, or not half of it. I've got to fail 1/3 of it because I'm saving on 3s. So that's how that works. You're going to do 20 damage from those saves. Hopefully that's making sense. So we're going to extrapolate this to all of the units. We've done all the math for this, and we'll see what it comes up with. Interesting thing is, as you stack wards, that we do have the ability to look at what wards do to it as well. And see, here we've applied a 6-up ward to the warriors, and the effective health grows quite a bit more. So we have some very unique abilities in Seraphon to make some of these units extremely tough, and they are still able to be kind of stacked on top of each other. So let's take Saurus Warriors, for example. Saurus Warriors, they start off on a 4-up save. Not great, but they get +1 if they're all on an objective. Sometimes that's difficult with 20 of them, but they'll get that +1 to save rolls, okay? You can do all-out defense for another +1 to save. Now that only helps if the opponent has any rend, because the best save you're ever going to make for Warriors is a 3-up roll. Now you can negate their rend, which is what all-out defense plus standing on objective can do. You can negate 1 rend there. We also have an asterism, Quetzal, the Preserver, which subtracts 1 from rend of the opponent if they're fighting us in melee in our territory. So we can subtract 1 from rend. We also still have +1 to save, and we also can still have all-out defense. So we can essentially, with those 3 things, we can essentially negate -3 rend, and we're still at a Saurus Warriors 4-up save. Now, we can also, we have a spell to subtract 1 rend from an opponent. It is an unlimited spell, so if you have multiple wizards, you can cast that multiple times. It's fairly short-ranged, unfortunately, but you can't. There is another option to do that, and so you could negate 4 rend from the opponent. Pretty cool, and that if everything's laid up just right, you can make our units extremely tanky. So we're going to look at a spreadsheet here that shows all of our different units and how they perform on effective health. I'm not going to go crazy on this. What we're looking at is essentially effective health versus 1 rend. Okay, that's generally the most common rend you have in the game. There is a fair amount of -2 rend. There's some no rend, and there's a little bit of -3 rend. But generally, most things are at -1 rend. So I think that's a good starting point to see how tough these are. So we're going to look at the effective health versus 1 rend, and then this column is the price we're paying of points per point of health, okay, effective health. So the lower number in those columns, the better. The next column we're looking at is health versus 1 rend, and then we're adding either Quetzal or all-out defense. So we're either subtracting 1 rend or we're adding 1 to save. These can stack. I'm not going to go that crazy with them because in general, you're not going to get your whole army at all-out defense. That'll apply to 1 unit. Quetzal is situational. But generally, you could get one of these off on the unit, I think. So, or the spell to -1 rend also. It effectively does the same thing. Then I also got a column for health versus mortal wounds, which just kind of goes straight through all of that and hits the ward save. So, as we're going to look at that, I did split up a few different things to just take a look at their effective health. Bastiladon is separate than a Thunder Lizard Bastiladon, which gives them +2 to health. I did separate out the Kroxigor, given them a 6-up ward in some cases. If you take the Astrolith Banner Bearer, it's a little difficult to fit that in list building, but it's not impossible. You can always take a Slann, an Astrolith, and then Kroxigor in that same battalion. I also added shooting for the War Spawn, just to kind of see how that works. Now, that doesn't stack with Quetzal, because Quetzal's only melee, but the shooting does. I mean, you can still all-out defense, so that second column there is still relevant. Anything else I put? I did do the Source Guard 5-up ward, and then a 6-up ward in case they lost the 5-up and they're just around the Astrolith, if that's what you wanted to take. So, then we stacked some stuff for Warriors on objective, and then on objective with a 6-up ward to kind of see how everything would work out. I didn't include some of the weaker heroes just because it's not relevant. So what we'll start off with is we'll just sort by this first column here, and it shows that effective health versus a 1 rend, that's all we're talking about here, it highly favors the Saurus Warriors on an objective with a 6-up ward. I think those are easy buffs to get there, and they end up at an effective health of 48 and a pretty cheap cost there per health point. The next effective one is Source Guards with their 5-up ward. I don't think either one of those is a surprise, as I kind of expected to be there. I was a little surprised that Warriors came out on top of the Guard. I thought the Guard might come out a little bit higher. Maybe if they were back at their old point cost, would that have driven them lower? They would have been almost close to the same. So if they go down a little bit more in points sometime, or if they go down in points sometime, then they might make it a little bit better. Even Saurus Warriors on an objective are still very efficient, and Saurus Warriors with just a 6-up ward are very efficient. So our infantry blocks of Saurus Warriors are quite good as effective health goes. Kroxigor with some buffs and stuff end up being fairly decent, and we've got our Warriors and Guard with no bonuses there. The Bastiladon ends up being pretty good, but it's about twice as expensive as the Warriors as far as just pure effective health versus 1 rend. And then things like, Raptidon Hunters and Chargers, they're good, but they just, I think it's just because their save isn't quite up to par with some of this other stuff. So nothing else really to note there. Let's sort by this column here, which shows us effective health versus 1 rend, and then either Quetzal or all-out defense. And we end up with Saurus Warriors on an objective with a 6-up ward, and then either doing Quetzal, so -1 rend, or all-out defense, +1 to save. And you're at 72 effective health, and it is extremely cheap here for their point per health for this unit. Source Guard do the same thing. Bastiladon, it's all kind of the same units here at the top, but they are very good. What's interesting is this Bastiladon with with +2 health from Thunder Lizard using Quetzal versus 1 rend. is a lot of effective wounds. 84 effective wounds for a Bastiladon monster. That's because it starts on a 2-up save. And so if you're if you're subtracting 1 from the rend and you're only being attacked by -1 rend, you're only failing on 1s. So a very effective use of wounds there. Even the normal Bastiladon without it is still it has the same effective wounds as a unit of Saurus Warriors. Now, Bastiladon's a little bit more expensive. That's why it's not quite as efficient, but it is a pretty good use of wounds. So, I mean, theoretically, you could spam Bastiladons in like a Thunder Lizard list, use Quetzal, and it might not get killed. So it might be pretty tough. One thing I did notice is Lord Croak here actually has a really high effective health when using Quetzal and against -1 rend. So he's very tough. No doubt he's got a good save. That's a 4-up save. He's got a 4-up ward, which is really good. The problem is that 72 effective wounds can disappear like that if he accidentally kills himself by rolling for his damage at the end of each turn, or end of each phase. So, end of each turn now, right? So, he's tough, but it's a little too risky, I think, for that. If we look at mortal wounds, I don't think anything was too surprising here. Sometimes the mortal wounds, it's really just about bodies. Somehow Warriors still came out on top if they have that 6-up ward. I thought the Saurus Guard would, since they have that 5-up ward, but as terms of efficiency, Warriors with a 6-up ward is just better versus mortal wounds than Saurus Guard are. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't think any other surprises there. I'm highlighting the ones that I like are in my green zone, just arbitrary cutoff point. So I think, so if let's sort by this middle column here, because I think this is the one where we really start to have some interesting stuff. So Warriors on an objective with a 6-up ward and Saurus Guard with a 5-up ward are our most efficient units here. So what would a list look like if we focused on those units? Let's make an army where we are extremely tough. It's hard to move us, and we have a ton of effective wounds. So let's go back over here. I did some list building here. All right. So here is 2,000 points. It's a 3-drop. I'll come back to my battle formation here in a second. I'm taking a Slon. Slon doesn't have great effective wounds. We looked back. I didn't even pull him up there. It wasn't really that relevant. But he does help buff other things. He gives a Saurus Guard the 5-up ward. That gives himself a 5-up ward. But more importantly, he's going to be returning units. When something dies, he's going to bring it back on a 4-up in your turn. So he's going to be bringing these things back that are already tough to kill. So I like that. He also does some good spells. And his loadout here, Incandescent Retresses and Being of the Stars, he's going to be unrendable and he's going to be healing in each turn. So it's it can be a very tough unit to kill on its own. We are taking a couple of Hunters of Huanche. Not that they're tough. I just need something to score objectives. So they're going into the Slon's Regiment just because I have to. And then we've got an extra unit of Saurus Guard reinforced there in the General's Battalion, so that he can use them for like a bodyguard, or if he wants to give him a rend buff or something, probably bodyguard, since you're trying to make everything as tough as possible. Then we're taking 2 regiments, both led by an Astrolith bearer, one with 20 Saurus Warriors in it, one with 20 Saurus Warriors, and one with 10 Saurus Guard. So what we have here is we have 2 big blocks of Saurus Warriors, 2 big blocks of Guard, the Slon, the 2 heroes that are going to run along with your Warriors, and then Hunters to play the board. In this list, I think you could very easily capture probably 4 battle tactics. Take their lands, take the flanks, seize the center, and the order when, I can't remember the name of, get 4 units in each quarter of the board. So there's 4 easy ones that you should be able to still obtain with this list. And it's going to be extremely hard to shift off of an objective. Now, battle formation, I'm doing Eternal Starhost. Now, I was thinking, obviously this is a Sunclaw list, right? I think Eternal Starhost helps us because this list is so slow other than the Hunters. This would give you a a teleport to where you can get these big blocks of warriors over onto an objective if you need to. So if the objectives aren't right there near where they can run onto them, or if they're just a little too far that you can't get the whole unit of warriors onto it, teleport in there, then run your Saurus Astrolith Bearer over to the objective. So I think that would be useful for an army that's as slow as this one is, the extra teleport. I think I have some interesting stuff here. So for my spell lore, I'm doing Celestial Manipulation. I thought about doing Lore of the Jungles for the extra rend of the Saurus Warriors, but I think I want Celestial Manipulation because you have the spell that can do the -1 rend to an enemy, and this also plays well with Twilight Sorceries here in a second. But then also you have Comet's Call to do some damage. So you can also run and charge if you need to with a big block of warriors or something if you're needing to get somewhere and charge, maybe onto an objective or something. So a little bit more useful, but also I really want a debuff, so I want that -1 rend spell onto a unit. This plays into Twilight Sorceries. I like Twilight Sorceries in this list if I'm thinking like actually trying to play this list, which I have a tournament this weekend, and this really makes me want to play this. Change my list at the last second. So Twilight Sorceries, I like this because it's all defensive, it's all debuffs. So Twilight Sorcery, you're throwing out palisades to stop people from shooting you, so you're putting that probably in front of like your Source guard and your Salon, or if you can get it out in front of some warriors who might be in danger, or just block up the board to just be real annoying. So not a bad little spell there, especially if you're fighting shooting. But also the spell portal is nice because now I can hit that unit that you have that I want -1 rend on. If I know that your hammer's coming into me, I'm already going to be -1 rend from Quetzal. I'm going to be +1 to save from the objective. I want to give that hammer unit another -1 to its rend, so spell portal will help me do that. Also, Geminids is actually just a really good debuff because if I put that out defensively, you're not going to be able to use command points when you're charging into my unit that's near that Geminids. And so now your stuff is just going to be even less effective versus my army. So this a complete debuff list, a complete, just go stand on the circles, survive. Can it do it? So I thought to myself, like, how many wounds would this actually be? And I figured this out here. So with these 3 units of Hunters, it really doesn't matter which one it is. 2 Astrolith Bears, my 2 reinforced units of Source Guard, and my 2 reinforced units of Warriors, and the Salon. Versus a 1 rend with either Quetzal or All Out Defense, so I'd definitely be using Quetzal. This is 540 effective health versus a lot of units in this game. That's a lot of damage that somebody's going to have to do. Now, if they have mortal wounds, at this point, it's still, they're still going to have to do 203 mortal wounds. A lot of armies that have mortal wounds aren't going to be doing that. So this turns into a lot of effective health. It seems like a lot of damage would be required to take this army out. Now, to be honest, I have not done any other armies, so I don't know how this stacks up to everybody else. I don't know what this looks like in terms of other horde armies or other really high armor armies, but this seems like a lot, right? It does, so I don't know. We'll see. Oh, one thing I didn't want to look at, Regiments of Renown. Okay, I think I pulled this up here. Saviors of Cinderfall, very good. Goodness. Look at this. So I ran the numbers on it too. Okay, 22 wounds. When it's on an objective, it has a 4-up save, a 3-up save, and a 4-up ward, which is just insane. And so versus 1 rend, it does 80. It has 88 effective health. Versus 1 rend, and it won't get Quetzal. It can only do all out defense to basically half the unit because it's really kind of 2 different units. So you're looking at 112 effective health versus that. That is actually really efficient. When we look at that points per health of 2.05, that's better than anything that we had here. So this is more effective than anything that we had as far as Source was going. So I could see why that Regiment of Renown has taken a lot. It totally makes sense. Oh, I also pulled that up as a list here. Let's look at what this list looks like. Here is a list with Saviors or Cinderfall, but still keeping everything else. Basically, all we had to drop was 1 unit of guard, okay? Which isn't great, but that does give us Saviors or Cinderfall, which has more effective health than the guard do. So 1990, we are still Eternal Starhost, Slaawn, kind of the same loadout, all the hunters. This time you can put one of the Astroliths in the Slawn's battle regiment. The other Slaawn can take all the Saurus stuff, and then you have Saviors or Cinderfall, and it's also a 3-drop army. So quite interesting there. It really does make me kind of want to take a heavy effective health list. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. What do you guys think? Think this would be playable? Think this could win a few games? Let me know below in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.